Hey guys, Gruz here. In this video, I'm going to show you a handful of the most sought after games that I have in my vintage Mac game collection. Now this isn't all that I've got. I will make a video about my full collection in the future, but it's currently boxed up in a storage unit, so instead of hauling the whole collection back to my apartment, I've picked out a few of the more desirable Mac games to show you today. This should be fun. I'll start out today by showing you one of my favorite breakout style games, Rkanoid. This game was so famous back in the day, and I've got this original Mac release complete with the disc, the information sheet, and the manual. Which the manual is so cool because it has this little comic book here which tells the story of the game. In my opinion, Rkanoid was the best take on the original Breakout formula. It twisted up the gameplay by adding enemies, power-ups, and fun layouts of the blocks in the different stages. In this game, you use the mouse to move your paddle left and right, and you want to try and bounce the ball into the blocks to remove them from the stage. One of the more notable features of Rkanoid was the power-ups that you get every so often when you break the blocks. These included things like a sticky paddle, multiple balls, and my favorite was always the laser gun. This game was originally an arcade machine, but this particular version was developed by Discovery Software, who took great care to match the quality of the original arcade. It's meant for black and white compact Macs, and it runs at a smooth and steady frame rate on them. I say this every time I talk about this game, but you've got to see this one running on original hardware. It's absolutely impressive, and I highly recommend this one. The next game I want to show you is a very beloved game in the retro Mac community. This is the classic paper airplane game, Glider 4.0, created by John Calhoun of Soft Dorothy Software. My copy here is 99.9% sealed, and I can't bring myself to open it. If you haven't played it before, in this game, you control a paper airplane who has to navigate through a house, searching for an open window to make an escape. This game is filled with all sorts of hurdles in the form of household hazards. Toasters, basketballs, paper shredders. The obstacles in this game are so creative and the premise is so much fun. The way this game works is that you can float left and right, but you're always falling down towards the ground, so you have to use the updraft from vents and candles to keep your paper airplane afloat, and avoid touching the ground, because if you do, you lose a life. This series was so imaginative, the kind of game that sticks with you long after you play it. Next up, I've got a copy of one of the most famous games of all time, the classic Tetris. Everyone knows Tetris, and it's been ported to just about every system imaginable. But this version I have here is special, as it was among the original commercially licensed US version of Alexei Pajitnov's original creation. The company Spectrum Holobyte brought it to several home computers back in the late 80s, and this Macintosh version they put out was fantastic. It featured the addictive Tetris gameplay, with crisp artwork available in both black and white and color, depending on your Mac. I always played it in black and white, and the detail in some of these scenes were absolutely amazing. Another amazing feature of this version was that it actually featured music while you were playing. Music in games on Mac was not something seen often, especially on compact Macs, where they had very limited system resources available to them. Tetris has proven itself to be timeless, and this version was no exception. It's fantastic, and I highly recommend this one. The next game I've got is one of the most desirable games on vintage Mac. This was Dark Castle, and this series was pretty much the gold standard of 1980s Mac gaming. This right here is the best copy I have of the game. I've also got a few sets of just the discs, but this one is complete with the discs, a little registration card that tells you how to copy that floppy, and a getting started guide that tells you how to copy it to your hard drive and gives you some gameplay tips. This is a platformer where you've got to get through 14 stages in search of a couple of power-ups that'll help you defeat the end boss, the Black Knight. You start out in an area called the Great Hall, and have to choose a section of the castle to take on. You're supposed to make your way through the shield and fireball rooms first, and the power-ups you gain from those rooms will help you get through the difficult Black Knight stages. This game was very difficult to most players, mostly because of its steep learning curve and unforgiving difficulty. You really had to practice a lot at this game, but it was never the type of difficulty that was unfair. It was all about timing and precision, rather than the trial and error difficulty of many of the games from this era. Like I said, this is not an easy game, but it sure is fun. It's got influences from several 1980s arcade games, Galaxian, Donkey Kong. It even kind of feels like a decked out Pitfall. Unfortunately, this game's reputation went through the ringer. And these days, people laugh at it for its countless low-quality ports. And it's justified. Most of the ports of this game are unplayable in my opinion. There were some bad deals made behind the scenes here, and allowed some very low-quality ports to be put out by 360 Pacific. This game was all about its professional graphics, sound effects, and gameplay design, and that presentation was not upheld in the ports. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that if these ports were handled right, this franchise would have been right up there with Prince of Persia. But no, now we've got angry nerds hitting it with a whip and swearing at it. Stay far away from this game on anything but the original Macs. But this original Mac version, I can't recommend it enough. Of course, you can't talk about Dark Castle without talking about its amazing sequel, Beyond Dark Castle. This is another highly sought-after vintage Mac game for good reason. This one took everything the original game had going for it and expanded on it to create a game that felt so much more like an adventure than the original. My copy here is in such good condition. It's complete with the discs, the getting started guide, and the warranty card is still intact on this one. In fact, the guy I bought this one from said he bought it new in box and only opened it so that he could archive it for the Macintosh Garden. The goal in this game is similar to the original, where you've got to get the shield and fireball and defeat the Black Knight. What's different about this game is that you have to fetch 5 orbs to open up the end area where the Black Knight is. The orbs are scattered throughout different sections of the castle that you can access through the main area called the Anteroom. It's such a fun game. It's pretty big too, and there's this very creative save game system where you've got to go into this room called the computer room and pull a lever to either save or restore your game. This was the pinnacle of Silicon Beach Software's short 4-year stint in gaming. This was their final game, where they released a few multimedia programs after this, which they eventually ended up acquired by Adobe. This game is one of my absolute favorites for Compact Macs, and I am so happy to have this in the collection. So the last game I've got for you today is one of the most obscure versions of the Mac Dark Castle games. This one is the 1994 color remake of the original Dark Castle. This one was created by another company called Delta Tau, who had acquired the rights to Dark Castle from the original company that bought up Silicon Beach Software. Delta Tau completely rewrote the original Dark Castle so that it would be in color and compatible with then current Macs. For the longest time, I didn't even think that this game came out as a boxed package like this. It turns out that this boxed release was very rare, as it was only available at a couple of retailers, and it was mostly sold through mail order directly from Delta Tau as an environmentally friendly mini package with just the manual and the discs. I got this copy from a former games journalist who sold off his massive collection several years ago. Probably the most I've spent on a single video game, but look at it. It's in such good condition. It's another game that I couldn't possibly bring myself to open up. It lives in a shadow box. So this game is pretty much the same as the black and white version, same rooms, same enemies, same sound effects, but this one's in color and PowerPC friendly. But for some reason, they decided to keep the same 512 by 342 resolution as the original Compact Macs, which means that it's usually windowed if you're playing on a bigger screen, which you probably are if you're playing in color. Still, I really liked this remake, a very obscure release, and I'm glad to have this one in the collection. So those are a few of the more sought-after Mac games in my collection. I have a lot of other interesting Mac games that would make a good part 2 for this video, so let me know if you guys want to see something like that in the future. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it to let me know. It really helps out my little channel here if you do that. Thanks for your time today, guys. Goodbye.